Okay, I think we're good. I think we're rolling. Fire this guy up. Oh, it's going to be a heck of a day, I'll tell you that right now. So it looks like we have a grand total of 2 folks here. I guess, oops, one more. Bruce just joined the call. Hey, Bruce, how you doing? And let's see, hopefully a couple other folks will be rolling in, but this is basically one of the things that I wanted to do as a bonus for those that purchased the Audello system, as you all probably know. And I just kind of wanted to give some extra insight and some stuff that, you know, the Audello system is good for a platform and things like that for podcasting, but certainly there's a lot of other things that go into the whole deal. So I'm trying to work my way through all of that stuff and then use the Audello system to do what it does the best. So that's kind of the scoop here. I'm going to go through some of what's been happening in my usage of it and things like that. The thing here is I don't really have formal presentations for these webinars, and this is the first one. I'm sure we'll probably do, gosh, maybe 2, 3, I don't know, however many we need, 2, 3, 4 more, and just kind of get a level set during maybe this first one here. I'd like to keep it interactive, okay, because you know, you can ask a question when you registered. We didn't get any questions. So one of the things that I was thinking is, gosh, you know, we're all dressed up, at least most of us. I can't speak for Fred as an example, but certainly since we're here and we are connected and we have the capability of recording audio, in fact, I'm recording our audio right now. If anybody wants to chat about something that might be useful as far as content goes, then I'm certainly going to have a replay for this webinar. And of course, what I'm going to do is pull the audio out of that and make a podcast. So that's the scoop there. That's just kind of an idea I came up with. So gosh, if you know, the more interactive the better. Hopefully everyone here will have a headset mic and that kind of thing. I'm showing my audio is pretty hot. Is it loud, or is it still good, you guys? Just kind of let me know. All right. So is it loud? Oh, it's perfect. Okay, Kim said. Okay, so it looks pretty good here, right? So just with that in mind, how many of you are wired for sound? Anybody? I think most people are going to just try to catch the replay on this. A lot of times it's hard to attend a live event, right? So we have a nice intimate crowd here. If you are wired, go ahead and just kind of raise your hand in your GoToWebinar thingy. I think all you guys are GoToWebinar savvy for sure. That kind of thing. And we'll just kind of see if anybody wants to chat about anything. Just to kick it off a little bit. Anybody have a question? Kim's on an iPad, right? So that'll mess you up. But okay, well, I'll tell you what, we'll just kind of plow ahead with some of the ideas and stuff that I had, and we'll see how it goes from there, okay? All right, let's see. So again, let me just kind of be clear as to what I'm not going to be doing in these kinds of webinars. I'm not going to go into how to use Audello in the sense, you know, how do I upload my MP3 and all of that good stuff, because that's all in the course, okay? And I'm also definitely not going to address technical issues with that software. In other words, if it doesn't work for you or you're having a problem of some type, then that's not something I'm going to address because, well, I didn't write the thing, and they have a really good support desk to kind of handle all that stuff. So all that being said, what I thought I'd do is just kind of walk through some of the stuff that I'm doing, using it for, and then the ideas that will come about as far as how I'm going to be using podcasting and stuff like that. Okay, so hopefully that sounds pretty good to everybody. Now, one thing that seems pretty useful to me is this whole concept of just recording audio and doing things like interviews is really good content, and you see this all the time in podcasting. And our good buddy Fred Castaneda is a pro at this, and so one of the things that we're tossing back and forth is how can we take audio content that we easily create just by doing, an interview in audio. And the reason it's easy is because it doesn't really take much for a guest expert to, be interviewed on something like Skype or things like that, right? And so it's a low commitment of effort on their part, and yet we can capture that as content. Okay, and there's a bunch of different ways to do that and stuff, and we'll talk about some of those probably in future webinars here and stuff after we do more testing. But the thing is that since it's so easy to do to get an audio file, then our idea is certainly to take that and turn it into some video content. So to basically create a video version. And we did a test on this, and I'll show you this and give you some links and stuff in just a minute and make some comments and notes. But basically, then if you think of as video creators, and I think all of us are video creators, but if we have an audio file, then we set it to visuals, and starting with just an audio file, here's kind of what I found in working on this little experiment and prototype. First of all, I think it would be exceptionally useful to have that audio file transcribed. And you'll see why in just a second when I start showing you how I kind of created a little demo, right? So that's going to be one idea and tip I think that's going to be pretty darn important. And essentially what I did for this particular experiment was I just used PowerPoint. So I'm going to go ahead and jump out of here for just a second, and I'm going to be putting links and stuff into the chat box. You don't necessarily have to go there right now, and I'll have them all with the replay, but here's kind of the scoop. So we did a little demo sample. Some of you might have seen this, but I don't think so, judging on the number of views and stuff it has. And basically, let me just go over to that link with you guys. Right? So the thing is, Fred gave me a little piece of audio file, and it was basically one of his podcasts. It's a little 19-minute podcast, I think. And on this particular page here, I go through and I deconstruct it, how I did it, why we did it, and stuff like that. So I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of this right at the moment, but I do want to give you like some of those tips and things if you want to try such a thing. Okay, so you can check out, how we came up with it and things like that. And then this is like the final prototype version, so you can see the end result. But if I kind of go and look at, let me see, I have the slides here that I created. So basically the way this Scoop works is I wanted to find a way to take an audio file and just kind of add images and stuff to it. So this is a little trick that I do. I took Fred's MP3 file, okay, and I created my very first slide. And you can even start with a blank slide if you want. But then I embedded the MP3 file in the first slide here, okay? And if we go to the playback tab, I have it start automatically, okay, and I actually hide the little icon during the show here. And you check this box that says play across all slides. So if we think about what that means for just a second, when this goes into slideshow mode, or in other words, when I go to record my slideshow, this audio file starts to play, okay? And my goal here then was just to let it keep playing throughout the slides, and I created slides that followed the narration, right? This is where having a transcript would be a beautiful thing, because as we kind of just flip down through here, what you'll see is that I created these slides by grabbing images of what Fred was talking about. Well, if you don't have that written down, and you got to listen to the file and then, you know, try to go find something, oh, it's just tedious. But if I can read it, then I read through the transcript and I go, oh, he's talking about he's talking about Paul Culligan. Gee, I think I'll just use PowerPoint here and go snag me a screen clipping of Paul Culligan and things like that. So it becomes a much more readily accomplishable task, I guess, to follow narration if you can see what it is and then kind of get visuals that go along with that. So I hope that kind of makes sense. This is a trick I use all the time when I create PowerPoint videos, right? So if I'm doing a sales video or something, I'll write my script, I record the audio, and then I build my slides based on the script, and then just use this little trick that, you know, you just let it start playing, and then all I do once my slides are done is click through and listen to the audio. In fact, I'm going to go into slideshow mode here right now, and I'll just kind of show you how that happens.
This is Podcast Reporter at www.podcastreporter.com. A bonus episode. What are 9 things that you won't get and that you'll be missing out on if you don't go to Podcast Movement, the conference?
Okay, so on this first slide, there are basically just 3 things going on. I'll go to the animations tab, animation pane, and you can kind of see it. So we started off with the Podcast Reporter because Fred was talking about that, and then he said, in this episode, here are 9 things you won't get. So I just put in a text box and had it come in on click. And when the music starts, I have this little guy float up on click. So literally, all I did there was I listened and clicked when appropriate, right? So it's kind of a good way to do that. Now, the other thing I didn't want to have happen was for this to get like a real messy kind of a thing. So I just want to point out a couple of quick design highlights here. What you'll notice is I'm using pretty much standard PowerPoint techniques here that I like to teach when I'm creating a video that goes along with narration. That is one thought, one slide, one image. Okay? This is very clean. You will not see a lot of twirling, whizzing, spinning kind of junk going on, but notice that it's big, it's impactful, and it's visual. So Fred talks all about the minds here. You're going to be missing the ability to be interactive and collaborative, and, you know, it's good content. So this just kind of sits there while that goes on. And to make it visually congruent, I just kind of went with that. So he's talking about a list of things, 9 things. It could be 3 things, but the key here, visually, and that makes this easy and reusable, is that this could be, this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3. Okay, so let's think about this for a second. If this is a template that I could use for any kind of top tip or top 5 or whatever, type of visualization of narration, then all I have to do is go in and change tip number 3. I go in and I change tip number 2, and I find a graphic that goes along with that. So I put in a little bit of time thinking about the design here, but my goal was totally to be able to reuse such a slide deck here for this kind of content, right? And top tips and stuff like that is awesome content, right? So that's kind of the scoop and the way I decided to go with that. So you can check out the end result, and we have some pretty good notes and stuff on how that happened here. In fact, this is a little mini webinar in essence, but I'll make one other point here. This kind of making a podcast visual, making an audio file visual, I don't think will work for every podcast. Okay, if it's just a conversation and there's nothing really, I don't know, necessarily to talk about visually, or if you have webcam video, say you did a Google Hangout or something, then I don't know that it would necessarily make for really good visual content. I'll give you an example. Our weekly screencast webinars. We talk a lot about a lot of stuff, and what you'll find is that sometimes during the call here or during those coaching calls, I'll just be answering a question, and I'll just be like sitting here in Camtasia and talking. But, there's nothing to demo. I'm not really doing anything. Now, that necessarily doesn't make great visual content, but if we kind of switch it around, that kind of content is probably something that I might highlight the audio for and export as audio to use as podcast content. Okay, so it kind of goes both ways. If visually the content can be shown and all I have is an audio file, as in this case, then yeah, I probably make a video and leverage that podcast content. But if I'm doing a video, like part of a webinar or something like that, and gosh, I have some nice little nuggets in here, but there's really nothing happening visually, then I might go the other way and produce some of my screen capture content out as audio, right? So hopefully that is kind of useful. Now, so I'll give you the little roadmap and stuff here. Hold on a second. But there's one other thing I want to try before I call this and use PowerPoint as my tool of choice. And it's another kind of visual tool that I absolutely love, and it's called PowToon. Okay, and I'm just going to touch on this real quick because I think I'll show you an advantage here. So I'm logged in here. I'm going to go to my dashboard, and I actually haven't even tried this yet, but I thought it might be interesting just to kind of wing through. PowToon, actually let me go back so you can, if you don't know what PowToon is, we can kind of see, but PowToon makes it really easy to create a lot of these nicely animated presentation style videos. I mean, it's really kind of cool. So there's a really simple web-based interface here. You get all these thingies to play with, and you can upload your own graphics and stuff like that. But here's what I like about it. And you see this timeline right down here. The thing with PowToon is, remember how I embedded the audio in the first slide of PowerPoint? Well, with PowToon, one of the things you can do is import your audio and then build add slides and build your content as you listen to the audio track. Okay, so in essence, it lets you kind of do it on the fly. And I don't know, maybe we'll just try this probably go horribly wrong, but I'm going to go ahead and create a new project here just for giggles. And you can try PowToon stuff for free, and you don't have to necessarily get a pro level. You can create a video and then download just that. But what I like is, they have some nice templates and stuff like that. Let me see. Gosh, I don't know. I might even just start one from scratch. So let's try that. And I'll just show you a little bit of what I mean here. So I'm going to test this, but we'll just give it a little bit of a quick shot. Right. So it's loading its awesomeness. And PowToon is pretty awesome. I like it a lot more than a lot of the kind of lame video software stuff that's coming out. Check, check. Okay, so the way I would kind of roll with this is I would, let's see, go to sound, and I will import a voiceover. Okay, and strangely enough, this is going to be the podcast episode that Fred did. So I'm going to try to do this. I'm not going to do all of it right now, but certainly this is something I want to try because of this really kind of cool case study 1. Okay, so here's Fred's audio file. And if I play that.
This is Podcast Reporter at www.
Okay, so I'll apply that, and now what'll happen is it gets put into the first slide, which lasts for 10 seconds. I can increase that if I want, but if I click play, oops, it's still uploading the sound here. If I click play, it's going to start playing that audio. And I can very finely move my head, and where Fred says, this is Podcast Reporter, I can have this graphic image. Dude, I can just pull this guy into PowToon and have it appear exactly when I want it to. So it's kind of like PowerPoint on steroids in that respect, because it's like PowerPoint with a timeline, okay, and it's sweet. So I think it's going to make a really good kind of a deal there, right? Okay, I don't want to get too much in the weeds on that, but I think that might be PowToon. Yeah, might be a really good way to take your audio recordings and really quickly and easily kick out some visual content. Okay, and let's see. Looks like Bruce does have a question, so let's go ahead and hit that real quick. Are you able to share with us, or maybe send us out a PDF report at some stage on your understanding of what the ideal in-home podcasting studio would look like, rather than what most podcast experts do? Tell their people the cheapest way to set up a studio. How about sharing with us the deal, regardless of cost, the ideal podcast studio would look like? Best microphones, technology, awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Bruce. And in fact, let's just take a quick look at something I'm kind of playing with here. I'm keeping a whole bunch of notes and stuff for information that I collect and things like that. When it comes to audio gear and all of that good stuff for podcasts, there do seem to be some fairly high-end but really affordable studio kinds of options. And for example, if you ask any number of professional podcasters out there, and Fred, you can back me up on this if you think it's correct, there are a couple that people really like. The kind of standard is called the Heil PR40. So you'll see that quite a bit. Rode makes a nice mic called the Podcaster. And the basic bottom line is mics come in all sizes and flavors, right? You can go all the way up to a studio quality mic, but here's the thing with that. A studio quality mic is designed to be used in a studio, and it has certain characteristics that make it unique to, say, the music industry. It also is somewhat enhanced or used in a studio with what are called mic preamps. All that gear you see in a recording studio. Well, that's not there just for good looks, right? Studios that record music, they're looking for things in a vocal performance like richness and warmth are the way they describe it. And a microphone in and of itself doesn't necessarily, it gives a certain sound, but what you'll find in a studio is that they will connect that mic into what's called a mic preamp. Sometimes that's in the mixing board, sometimes it's really high-end external gear, but it's electronics that basically, change the sound and the warmth and that depth and stuff like that. So that can go really high-end. Well, the truth of the matter is that for audio narration, it's absolutely not necessary to go to that extreme. So when you say the ideal studio, it certainly isn't a pro-level music studio. And what we'll find is that things like, gosh, I don't even know what this runs for at the moment. I think it's like $250 or something like that for the Heil. In the world of studio mics, that is not a lot of money. Now, in the world of computer mics, and the $79 Snowballs and Blue Yetis, it is a bunch of money. So when we talk about like the higher end studios and stuff, then certainly we'll be putting together lists and stuff like that. So I'm kind of working on that, and yeah. Got a lot of good resources for that kind of thing. So I hope that answers your question. But I definitely am interested in doing that, putting together that kind of studio, right? Fred says, oh yeah, Fred also talks about a mic, especially if you're doing interviews and stuff, doesn't necessarily have to be something that sits on a arm and swings in front of your face like you see in a radio station. There are portable recorders like the Zoom H4n and things like that that really kind of give you some flexibility, because you can get just the awesome sound that you want in a portable recorder, okay, and you can connect microphones and stuff to it, but even in and of themselves, you get them in proximity to the person that you're talking to, and they do an amazing job. So that kind of technology is also picked up quite a bit. So you do have some flexibility and stuff like that. Fred mentions the XENYX mixer from Behringer, and actually that is one of the pieces of gear that I was testing when we started the call. I have an XENYX 302, which is just two inputs or one microphone, and it gives me some of those preamp electronics. I have a little equalizer here, so I can, richen it up on the bass end if I want. And see, that's something that you can take advantage of for almost any kind of microphone, is to get this external kind of interface. It connects via USB, so there's definitely some advantages and stuff in using some kind of recording gear, but I don't want to get too much into that just at the moment here. Right, so we'll put some of that stuff out. Fred and I will certainly work on that kind of deal. Right? Nice. Good question, though. Okay, I want to jump back and just maybe cover a couple of other quick things that I'm playing with and working on. So that was that. I actually had a question in, I don't know, some group on Facebook. Somebody wanted to know if you could record Skype calls with Camtasia, or how to record Skype calls. And I found an article on the TechSmith blogs that say, well, yeah, you can record Skype on with Camtasia. So the basic bottom line there is you just fire up your Camtasia recorder, okay, and you have Skype running, and certainly Camtasia will pick up what you say in your microphone, okay, but to capture the voice of somebody else, you have to set it to record system audio as well. And I don't think I can actually show you. Well, maybe I can. No, I might not be able to. You might not even be able to see this. The recorder's running right now, and I don't want to stop it. But basically, when you click your audio tab here, it'll ask you what mic you want to use, but also there's a checkbox that says record system audio, and you just need to make sure that is checked. So TechSmith said you could do it, and oh gosh, I don't have it in my links here, but I'll make sure I put that in for the replay for that article on how to do it. TechSmith says you can do it, so I tried it. I tried a little test, and let's see here. Let me open up this project, recent projects, because I found a couple of things that might be useful. The added benefit of that, of course, is you see I didn't really record anything on my screen, but you might know that Skype also lets you do a video chat, okay? Or you can also show your screen. Now, let's say I was having a conversation with somebody and I had a web browser up. You know, maybe we were talking about PowToon on Skype. Well, Camtasia is recording my audio through my mic. It's recording their audio through Skype, and Camtasia could be recording all of this, you know, what we're talking about. Okay, Ilene, well, let's move to the 6-second mark and see how that works, you know. Or let's put a little guy in there at 6 seconds and have him fly in, you know. So that would create video content as well. But let's say you just wanted to use it to record a Skype call to get your audio track. The reason I kind of like that is because Skype is a very low barrier, technological barrier. Again, if you just want to find an expert and say, hey, can we jump on a quick Skype call, right? And do something like that. So I basically did one. And I'd probably play with some of my mixer settings and stuff like that. But how you doing?
Okay, how are you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Okay, so for example, right off the bat, I think I'm going to need to boost up the volumes and stuff. So that's one of the things I probably would do. Let's give that a quick shot. So I'm just going to jack the volume level up. And what I found was that the recording of the system audio, when I did this with our gal Leslie, it was nice and strong in my ear, but it came out just, you know, not quite as good or not quite as strong. So probably need to play with some of the audio settings and stuff here.
How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. I'm just trying to record a Skype call. And let me just see if we can get Leslie a little bit more here. Oh, it gets the little ringing sound, which is good.
Hello, on.
Hey there, how you doing? Okay, so I think it's definitely possible. And one of the other things I wanted to try, let me just see what we got here. Okay. I'm going to click that one. So,
Okay, how are you doing?
right, so the volume leveling turned out to be pretty useful in this particular Skype call. Now, one of the things you'll also find if you're doing like a recording of just audio, my buddy Steve Washer did a recording of an interview that we did, and we made a podcast out of it. Well, he sent me the source file, but here was the problem. His audio was just really weak, really weak. And so let me just open this up for a second. And what I found was that rather than kind of screw around with a lot of extra tools to even out the volume levels, so his audio was weak, mine was strong. And there are tools out there that you can run an audio file through, like something called the levelator and, stuff like that. But what I found was that using the silly little editing thing, the audio tab in Camtasia, actually did a pretty darn decent job of leveling out both of our audios. And I used the high volume variation, okay, and it made just like a huge difference. So let me see here. I'm going to see if I can find a place where where he talks and then I talk. I might not be able to. Let's see here. The very early ages of computing in general, I spent the last 10 years. Okay, so that's me.
Naylor.
Hey, Steve, how you doing? Okay, so
Along the way, welcome, Lon Naylor.
Hey, Steve, how you guys doing today? I guess the bottom line point there was that it was quick, it was simple. You just check the button here, and it just kind of worked without doing a lot of monkeying around and stuff like that. It's something that I've never been a huge fan of the audio tools in Camtasia, but this actually worked really pretty darn well. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that it's probably worth a try. If you do an interview and your audio file, one person is really low and the other person is kind of strong, this will, at least get you in the game. And sometimes my alternative there would be to throw the thing away because it's like, oh, that just sounded horrible, But I was able to really just kind of salvage it, okay? Another thing that I want to talk about real quickly then is something called the Fluency Heuristic. And this is actually it's a concept that kind of goes like this. And just kind of follow me for a second. Have you ever watched a presentation of someone speaking and that person was just so eloquent? They didn't fumble, they didn't stumble, everything that came out of their mouth was like pure poetry and seemed always to be on purpose, okay? And you just kind of sit there and you go, wow, that was really good. The other thing that probably happened in your head that you might not have realized was that you would think to yourself, yeah, that guy's good, but I like it and he's good because he sounds like he really knows what he's talking about, like he's really smart, okay? And that's kind of the way it is. The fluency heuristic rather states that the more fluently that one speaks, the more intelligent, literally, they are perceived to be. So one of the things you'll find in a lot of recordings and things like that is a lot of fumbling and stumbling and ums and ahs and sometimes things just kind of go off the rails, but they're in your recording. Well, if we go in and we edit rather ruthlessly, what you'll find is that because of this little deal right here, you can literally make yourself, and this is also kind of a key, your guest sound smarter, right? So let me go back to Camtasia for just a second, and I'll just kind of show you. This is the recording of the Stephen Washer interview, and I'm going to go to the clip bin here so you can kind of see this line here a little bit better. And let's jack this up a little bit. Okay, a little bigger. Okay, so this is my audio track right here. And if you're familiar with Camtasia, you know that each one of these little stitched lines here is an edit. Okay, so here is about the first minute and 30 seconds worth of our audio. And what you might be able to see is that I made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 edits to the audio. And I know for a fact, like right here, let me just play this for a second. Now listen to Steve's voice in terms of what it is that he's saying.
Such really great dealings. I have an enormous amount of respect for this gentleman, Lon Naylor. He was an...
Okay, I will tell you that in the original recording, Steve said like 4 times in there, and there was a long pause here where this edit is. But if you think about it, he sounds just smooth and fluid.
Always have such really great dealings. I have an enormous...
Okay, and this goes on constantly in this. Now I did this one as an exercise in, when I say ruthless editing, let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to zoom out on the timeline. Okay, so that was the first minute and 20 seconds. Oops, here we go. Here's the first 4 minutes right here. Here's the first 8 minutes. And then it just kind of goes off the rails from there. So if this is edited as ruthlessly as possible, then you can see there's a lot of stuff that was done there. Now I did this one on purpose, again, just to kind of see exactly what that would entail. And I don't necessarily recommend that you go in and remove every and ah, right? Because in some respects, it's part of the natural conversation and things like that. But what you'll find is that it really, almost listening to any particular portion here, a sales pitch of any kind is a presentation. So it seems to be the perfect tool, and it's something that people can kind of wrap their heads around, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to put together a presentation of content. And with tools like, I say, PowerPoint, it will just record it as video. Okay, I promise you that did not go that well during the recording. And even during any live event that we're doing tonight, I fumble, I stumble, and things like that. But what you'll find is that if it matters, and if you really kind of want to, you can kick it up several notches and end up sounding like a professional presenter, right? And it's that concept that when people hear that, the fluency heuristic says that the guy really knows what he's talking about. And it's a very subtle kind of a thing, but I thought it was kind of useful just to know about. So, you know, not to necessarily give yourself all kinds of extra work, but, you know, editing is almost always a good thing in the long run. And you know what, quite frankly, it looks like this took a long time, or there was a lot of work here. Yeah, there's a lot of cuts here, but as part of the process, I mean, it's pretty sublimely simple. You know, I just listen of the trade, and if I don't like it, then I just kind of highlight it and snip it out. And what I find is, particularly in my own speech, I can literally look at a WAV file and see my ums and stuff like that. It takes a little practice, and I'm not recommending you go through and you ruthlessly edit everything, but just be aware that there's something called the Fluency Heuristic, and it can make kind of a difference, all right? Okay, one of the other things that I want to point out, let me see, did I have a, right. Here's kind of a thing, it's a resource really. There's a gal out there called Ilene Smith, and she's just a charming lady. I like her. And what I also like is some of the tips and content that she comes up with. But here's kind of the scoop. Content, well, let me ask you a question. Is anybody having problems kind of finding content to do podcasts on? I mean, you may or you may not, but essentially one of the ways that I keep track of stuff that I find that might be interesting to do as content is with a little tool called Scoop.it. And this is a curation tool. So what we'll see here is that Ilene runs several interest pages. And one of them is on podcasts. We'll take a look at that in a second. But here's kind of the thing, is that you can create a Scoop.it on any topic that you're interested in, and when you find cool stuff, you push this little button right here that says Scoop.it, and it will automatically add it to your interest page. Okay, that's called curation. So a lot of times what I'll do is I will, you know, in the course of learning about my market or finding stuff, cool tips and tricks, like, oh, here we go, maybe something from TechSmith on their blog, right? Or something like that. What I can do is I will, let's see, here's a corporate training tip. Okay, so I'm just going to jump there for a second. And if this is something I like, if it's something I want to talk about on a podcast or in a video, right, then I can curate it. So I'll click my Scoop.it button, and I will add it to my interest page called Camtasia Tricks. Right? And you can do all kinds of interesting things like share it on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, WordPress. You know, it'll post right to your blog if you want, which is kind of awesome. But here's the thing. I'll go ahead and publish that. And that's pretty much it. So let me open this guy. And this is what the page looks like. Right? So here are all these tips and tricks, Camtasia tricks and tips and stuff that I found. And I didn't do anything to create this page or code it. But it's really quite awesome and extraordinary. So I can always go back, and it's like where I collect all my cool stuff. I could share it if I want, but primarily what I use it for is for content ideas. For example, here's one for royalty-free music. There's a guy out there, I forget what his name is, but he runs a site called Incubator, which has been out there for like ever. So this is an independent musician, and you can share his music. Kevin MacLeod, that's it. You just have to give him attribution. Well, I could talk about this to you folks. Hey, here's a cool resource. It's called Incompetech. This guy, Ken MacLeod, will give you all kinds of music that you can use for free. And all you have to do is give him attribution. So we'll click royalty free here. See, it's a way for me to go back in and find some content that might be useful, right? So I like that. So anyway, 1 second. the reason I also bring that up is that this gal Ilene has one on podcasts, and it is pretty good. I'll go ahead and put Ilene's Scoop.it in the chat box. Her stuff on YouTube, also just awesome. So here's a way to leverage what somebody that is pretty good at what they do finds and collects. Do you think that that is a good way to leverage somebody else's interest and their effort? Okay, I'm dying to check this thing out. It's called the Voice Meter, and I think it certainly has something to do with, you know, some of the audio stuff. Hey, maybe this goes in our ultimate podcast studio kind of thing. I don't know, but now I found it and I can check it out, right? So it's really kind of a nice little tool to find stuff. I recommend that you go ahead and, you know, look through here. Ilene does a good job of not just posting a bunch of crap. If it's on here, it's pretty good value, and she always adds her, you know, comments and stuff like that on why she thinks it's good. And, you know, here's some stuff on mobile podcasting, and it's just good stuff. I just like it. Here you go. The Heil PR40 versus the EV RE20. Right? So we're talking about, well, what is the ultimate podcast studio? Well, heck, I don't know. Maybe we need to do some pros and cons here. Or, you know, maybe this guy knows. That kind of thing. Sweet. Okay. That's kind of all I had for some conversation stuff today. Let's see. And Fred, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your comments from the box there, and we'll put those in with the replay, because Fred always has a bunch of good tools and stuff going on. Let's see. Fred, are you wired up? Anything you want to chime in about real quick? Again, since we're here, we're all dressed up. Are you dressed this time? Because you know what happened last time. If you want to unmute, just raise your hand or something. Nope, no mics. He's in a meetup. Nice. Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, I'll ask a parting question. Was this kind of content useful? I did want to jump in and just do a quick look at some of my Audello stuff here and give you kind of my take on what it is that I'm doing. So I need to do that before we sign off. So then, essentially, those are some ways that we'll create our content and things like that. We're going to let Audello do what Audello do. And here's kind of my situation with it at the moment. So if I go to my my dashboard here, just real quick, I don't know if anyone else finds it extremely irritating, but I wish they would not make this stupid thing autoplay. So I have that feature request in. But I successfully went through all the setup. It was really simple. I'm connected to my Amazon S3 account, which of course I never have to do again, which is awesome. I submitted my podcast to iTunes using just Audello. Super simple. Got approved in 4 days. It seems to me from what I've heard that that is fast. Things like that. So I don't know. It says it could take a week or so or whatever. It took me 4 days, and I was approved. So again, I'm not going to get into all that stuff, but what I'm doing as far as my testing and stuff now then is essentially I have some files and I have a podcast. And I am intentionally, at this point in time, not really promoting. anything. What I'm looking to do is set a baseline for purely magical and organic traffic, right? I mean, I have like a blog post for each of these, and I think they're in the podcaster's newsletter that I put out, and that's it. So the audience there is really not a lot, but it's all set up, it's ready to go, and so my baseline is going to be no effort in monetizing or building the audience, and then putting a lot of effort into building the audience and then monetizing. So I logged in just this afternoon, and I haven't for like 2 weeks because I'm like busy with other stuff. So let's just look at the stats and stuff here. I have one podcast currently, so that's Screencast Weekly. And so this is purely organic traffic. So it looks like there are, some downloads, some plays, and things like that. So this was probably from the newsletter, but if it's purely organic traffic, I'm going to let it collect some statistics, and then I'm going to look at those statistics, and I'm going to see the results of things that I do moving forward, right? So the bottom line, and the reason for that being that, well, if I know what I'm getting naturally or normally, and I do something that I think should make a big difference, and nothing changes, well, then I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to find something else to do, right? So I'm letting it collect in here for a bit, and let me see here. Let's see what else we have. Let's go to the episode breakdown here. So here's that. Let me see. Select an episode. I'll look at the basic stats. So this is the Steve Washer thing. And let's go. I think it said the most popular one was the Ray Ortega one. So this is for let's go to the month. Okay. Now, this I thought was kind of interesting. If we go to actually, I do have completed listens on this one. Let's go back to the Steve Washer one for a second. Look at that. Let's go to the month. So I got some listens and some plays and some downloads, but nobody listened to the whole thing. So I don't know how big a deal that is, although I certainly, depending upon where I have maybe a call to action, maybe in this particular podcast, putting it at the very end would not be that good of a deal. That kind of thing. Average drop-off time, 1 minute out of, I don't know how long the thing is. It's like almost an hour. So that's not good. So what I'll do is I'll try to figure out why that might be and stuff like that. Okay. But you got to have some stats to get cracking on such a thing. So there you go. Right. Bruce says, I think you raise a good point. Re building an audience and monetizing it. This is an area of huge interest from probably all of us, tracking in metrics. Right. So this is just kind of a first stab type of a thing. But I think I want to have a baseline. And I think these stats are actually going to be pretty good because you get all kinds of stuff. Let's look at the breakdown. Tells me where they're being played from and things like that. Engagement. These are kind of cool. This is what's called a heat map. So it will kind of tell you where in the course of things people are kind of losing it. And I don't know, with stats, I'm always amazed and confused and dumbfounded sometimes as to what the numbers actually mean, right? So if people say that the average drop, if the stats say the average drop-off time is 1 minute, I hardly buy that, right? I mean, it just seems weird to me. A minute? Oh, that kind of thing. And then, of course, once I start to get my views and audience up, I'll kick in some of the calls to action in the players and stuff like that. I think the best use and the way I'm going to monetize this is not to monetize the podcasts themselves, but I want to drive opt-ins. The way to monetize, one of the best ways to monetize is to build a list, okay? And then keep providing that list with extra value so that they know, like, and trust you even beyond just listening to your great podcast content. But that's where the rubber meets the road as far as I'm concerned, right? So any other questions? And I think we'll wrap it for the evening. I'll get a replay as soon as possible. We'll schedule the next one of these probably in I want to say within the next couple of weeks. I might even put together like maybe a private, not necessarily private Facebook group, but a place where we can kind of banter back and forth more frequently, right? Okay. And then I was going to wrap up by asking if you guys thought this was useful kind of content, or am I just smoking dope? So if you go ahead and leave me just a little bit of feedback, then I will let you all go. But you can't go till you let me know. Okay, so Kim said very useful, right? Let's see. Cool. Yeah, Bruce brings up a point that Brendan Burchard does podcasts, and they're insanely popular. His are never more than 10 minutes. Yeah, so that could very well be. And I'm thinking certainly the same is true. You know, the shorter the better usually, because people just don't have the attention span normally. Keep them short, keep them punchy, and that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, and the good energy level. Brendan is an excellent speaker. He's a motivational speaker, and the guy can motivate you just by chatting with you. It's a nice guy. Yeah. Okay, everybody, I will go ahead and let you go, and have a good evening. Talk to you soon.